the tells of the return of Christ is that he absolutely criticizes the biblical fathers, which is contrary to what you think, right? So I'm talking about the Old Testament fathers. He absolutely rips them to shreds, right? And the Bible actually gives Messiah or Christ or Messiah. He will absolutely criticize the Old Testament fathers and just tear them apart. At least one of them, right? And
but they reckon that 95% of churches today will not be able to walk into heaven based on the hierarchical beliefs.
Well, it's a lot of them being taken over by intelligence agencies, and they're just voting blocks, right? Okay, so here we've got some people who aren't really questioning anything. So how are we going to sway their vote? We'll get the priest to do it. We'll just sway him, and then he'll tell his flock how to vote. And
absolutely. I mean, I was at a Methodist church 2 and a bit years ago now. It was just after the referendum. And I wanted to tell them about a national prayer day. And basically the minister, in a very weak moment, and I say weak moment because it was rare for ministers to say to the whole congregation, have you got any notices, in front of everybody else? So I stood up and said, could I give a notice out? So he said, okay. And you could see he looked very worried because obviously he knew I was very much into leaving the EU, and that went against their church. So I went to the front, got hold of the microphone.
Oh dear. Come on. Sorry. Shoot. Come on now.
I explained there was this national prayer day in London and that God wanted us to leave the EU. Well, I mean, he could have been knocked down by a feather. There was like this deep intake of breath from the whole congregation. You could have heard a pin drop at that point. And then I just moseyed back to my little seat. Yeah, and he just basically sort of excused me to the whole congregation and said, oh, don't mind about Caroline. It doesn't matter if you didn't vote to leave the EU. You know, God is this, God is that, and the other. But then I wrote to him later and I talked to him about common law. That was actually God's law. And he said, no, we don't talk about politics in church. And I thought that was really funny. I said, but it's God's law, so why can't you talk about it in church? And of course, the church itself, the Church of England, is purely a political arrangement.
Yeah. And the Queen actually swears an oath to the bishops of the church, not to the people. Right?
Well, that can't be right then, surely.
No, it is right. Elizabeth is the Queen of...
No, but it can't be right, though. I mean, what I'm saying is that's not the way it should be, surely.
Yeah, absolutely, because she's a fake queen. And if she was a true monarch, and true sovereign, she would have updated everything according to the times and according to the beliefs of people. And instead of protecting the Church of England, she's absolutely destroyed it. So the attendance is, there are more staff than attendees. It's zero. It's fat zero. And as the churches have closed, they've been taken over by mosques and tattoo parlours. So churches close, tattoo parlours come up.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of churches that now meet in village halls, Rotary halls, etc. Although I still do have a question mark over churches meeting in halls based on Rotary symbolism and Freemasonry symbolism.
Yeah, the Freemasons have this thing. It's something like the energy they leave behind in a meeting, and that's why they don't want other people meeting, other groups meeting in their temples. But it seems that it's okay for them to meet in others' temples, others' churches, etc., or halls. So we got well off topic. which is kind of...
We have, actually.
I was a bit tired.
I've actually been able to speak tonight.
Yeah. But no, one of the listeners contacted me on Skype and said, "Oh, great interview. Can you put some source material on your website?" Right. So what I'm doing is the last 3 interviews, I've copied about 10 or maybe 15 pages and put it in a PDF form on the court notice. Queen Elizabeth II has no titles and best colour of law styles public notice. Right, so I've put that on my website, www.kingof.uk, so you can go there and you should be able to read the text that I read off last night and the night before. Right, does it actually?
Now, can you just remind us what's the website again called, Greg?
Kingof.uk.
Kingof.uk.
Yeah, dot is like a point, like King of UK, essentially. Yeah.
Well, in maths and in the finance world, I think they call it a spot.
A spot, okay. King of Spot UK, right? Yeah. So I was going to read the oath of like when we do a focused interview, and I actually read and we stay on track. It takes a full hour to read 3 pages. How weird is that?
Yeah.
I said, really? Only 3 pages? Yeah. So either someone's interrupting or I'm a slow reader.
Are they level 2 readers there, Greg?
I'm trying to put an emphasis on it so that people can actually get it, So we have been taken over by word, right? And it's quite interesting because I think the Bible says something like, in the beginning was the word. Right, so we should take, and the beginning of all contracts was the word. So we should really know what the words mean. Yeah.
Yes.
So we really like the word annex is a really weird word because to me, visually and phonetically, it means to cut something off and cast it aside. But apparently, when you annex a country, you actually grab it and absorb it.
Yes.
Right?
That's
It's the opposite. And when you've got, it's just a weird word. And let with 2 T's means condemn. So here, I'll just jump ahead so we can sort of, the Privy Councillor oath states, quote, everything granted to Her Majesty is annexed to the Crown. And that means that everything granted to Elizabeth is given to the Crown. So everything granted to Elizabeth is given to Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars.
Do they pay tax?
The Royals.
Well, I think the Queen's only just recently started paying tax.
Yeah,
in a personal capacity.
I was staying at a friend's castle, right? It's quite a big area. It's a nice castle, nice grounds. Everywhere you see is his. And the tax person rings up while I'm there. I'm sitting quite close to the phone and I couldn't be asked moving. And the tax person goes, "Oh, your tax bill for this year will be, let's say, I'll give a different figure, but let's say £20,000." And he's got hundreds of houses on his land that he rents out, right? And it's a big area and it's incredibly complex. And the tax department just rings up all these large estate owners and tells them how much they'll pay this year. And it's just like a round figure, right? And it's less than the heating bill of the castle.
Really?
Yeah.
So how did they manage that then? Because a lot of rich people who've got castles have decrepit castles because they can't afford the maintenance.
Oh, this one's fine. All of this castle's open. They close off a few rooms in winter.
Oh, because it's opened up for the public, so they've done a deal with the tax people.
No, it's not that. No, they just close it off, a few rooms off in the winter, so they don't have to heat them. Because the stone walls lose a lot of heat, etc. So they often close off one wing or one floor. So So with the Queen in Windsor Castle, the tax department will ring up and say, "Oh, Elizabeth, you owe £50,000 in tax this year for all of your properties."
Right. Okay.
Right, and she's got, let's say 10% of England, but actually it's the Duchy of Lancaster that actually has all the property, but she is actually the Duke of Lancaster.
Now, who is it
Lancaster?
David Livingstone that's part of this?
What's that?
Isn't David Livingstone part of the Duchy of Lancaster? Isn't this to do with the Freedom of Information Act requests? Are you aware of that?
I think the Duchy of Lancaster it's the biggest landowner in England. Massive. Like it's so big, it's embarrassing, and you can basically go from southeast to northwest England.
How old is the guy who has that title then?
Don't know. The Duke of Norfolk is also massively wealthy. He's inherited a whole lot of other titles, so other lands as well. And he's also in charge of the Boy Scouts.
Well, that opens up another can of worms then, doesn't it?
And he's Catholic, and he's also part of deciding who the monarch is. Right? So you've got Catholics in charge of the Boy Scouts deciding who the monarch of the United Kingdom is. Right? And then you've got Elizabeth, who is an absolute Catholic, who's destroying the Church of England as fast and as much as she can, with absolutely total lack of interest. So much so that most of the churches have closed, and she's imported another religion and then opened up tattoo parlors everywhere.
Well, I think this has been done in conjunction with the Talmud. There's no difference really between the Talmud and the Quran, and people need to. This is all connected with divide and rule.
Yeah, and it's also
it's got to stop, because we have got a very limited window of opportunity now for us actually to take back control. Because Boris Johnson isn't going to get us out of the global corporations. It's not going to remove us from there at all. We've signed all the papers. We've signed all the stuff in Parliament, with all these corporate trade deals, which basically allow the corporations to bankrupt the national government. And of course, it's us mugs, the taxpayers, or the other people, not me, but the other taxpayers that are actually going to bail this country out until we can't bail the country out anymore.
Yeah. If you had someone who had infiltrated a socialist and communist meeting in the 1950s, let's say 1951, and that they had spoken on TV and said everything that communism and socialism had planned for the West and how they're going to destroy it. There'd be graffiti everywhere. There'd be total destruction of the family. Daughters would be in prostitution. Most of the people have tattoos. All the churches were closed. Being invaded by black people who were pretending to come from the Middle East.
They wouldn't have believed you, would they?
The monarchs would be trafficking heroin, and all the British royal family would be pedophiles and child murderers. And Prince Philip has just more or less announced that he's a cannibal, as well as a pedophile. Then you just think the person's nuts, right? But that's exactly what's happened, because what happened in 1958, 57 to 59, is some of the objects were captured for predicting the future. So the future was all laid out in the 1st and 2nd century AD, basically between about 33 and 133 AD. All the future was laid out for the next 2,000 years, which is kind of de rigueur. And then in 1957 to 59, a lot of technology was captured whereby you could see the predicted future. So a lot of the people who were predicted to do big things in the future were then attacked by the socialists and communists and depowered, so they'd have no job, no money, no family, and would be caught up in the legal system and continually framed by these socialist, communist, pedophiles, etc., in order for the true and predicted future not to happen, or to happen more slowly. And I went and saw one of the military men, he's a real hard man, who had captured 2 of 6 of these pieces of technology in 1958, and it was up in Newcastle, and he said to me, "We've been expecting you."
Right.
Which meant that I was one of the people predicted, right? And I was also one of the people who were severely attacked by the socialists and communists. Like, they'll stop at nothing to absolutely destroy the predictions. And the predictions are good things, and the predictions are for the Israelites, and the Israelites are the people who hold the values.
Yes.
Right? And
they are predominantly, from what I can see, they say there's a line of people from the northeast, and it's almost like a diagonal line to the southwest. What do you think to that?
From the northeast of England to the southwest. And that's the Israelites.
Predominantly. And what's really interesting is that the northeast in particular was a huge Leave area.
Are you talking about the Michael Merry line, or are you talking, because, you know, England is kind of shaped like that, you know, and I'm here and you're there. You know what I mean?
It's changed predominantly because a lot of people have moved out of the city of London and moved across because they want a better life. And that has obviously distorted the demographics. I mean, when I was campaigning around sort of Kent, Rochester area, people said, "Oh, we've come out of London." They'd all come from London. So, yeah, the demographics are changing, no doubt about it, because of people coming in. I mean, I was talking to somebody from the East Coast last night, and the RNLI are basically going out now to save the people in the boats coming in. So the demographics are certainly changing in this country, and there's no point in waiting till we've got we're a minority and being less than the 50%, is there? That's why we've only got a small window
in which to breed.
Yeah, because if you want a family, you want to give them the best. So I guess for the indigenous population, the average rate is probably less than 2 now, 2 children per couple. Yep. People coming in from Eastern Europe, it's 3 per couple. And people coming from Muslim countries, perhaps it's 6 per couple. And it's not just that, it's the fact that they're breeding at possibly an earlier age. So you're actually bumping up on the generations. So it's not just 8 per couple, but their children are already having children before we've had grandparents. Do you know what I mean? Grandchildren.
Yeah. They're breeding 3 generations to our 2.
Absolutely, yeah. It's in the maths.
Yeah. I know.
It's not motive. It's just factual.
Yeah. This has all been planned. It's part of. See, Queen Elizabeth realises that, for instance, I'm the true King of England, right? And I fulfilled all of the predictions, and she absolutely damn well knows what those predictions are. So she's trying to destroy the United Kingdom before she hands it over to me. I am also holding the values during the tribulations, right? And the tribulations are almost over. Now, I also ran and I'm running the Shin, and I'm also the arch treasurer of the Royal Secret. So I have all the Royal Secrets and I'm allowed to tell them. And I'm also registered in the Holy See as a member of the Jesus Mary lineage, which places me above Elizabeth and above all of the royals of the United Kingdom and Europe. And that means that none of them are allowed to say anything against me.
Really?
Yeah.
How wonderful is that?
There's rules to the game. You know, there's rules.
But we're in a satanic realm, aren't we, at the moment? We're in the Vatican realm. So, as you say, we have to play the rules by their game.
No, because I got the Knights of Malta out of the Vatican. So I released the world's money supply without Vatican control.
Right. So what did the Knights of Malta do? I mean, as I see it, there's covert messaging at the moment in the newspapers, which is implying that the money supply, or the banks could crash. The money supply will not be as we've had it in the past. It will all change.
They're actually saying that, but what they're actually saying subconsciously is the face on the notes and the coins may change.
Right.
Not that we're going to be in a cashless society.
You don't think so?
No. Like, the British people, let's say the Israelites in Britain, right, the white people, we love to trade a little bit of coin, have a laugh and a bit of banter. Like, you can't do that with a credit card. You can't swipe a credit card or put it in and say, okay, it's $2.99. You can't have a banter and say, $9.50 for a laugh. You just can't do that stuff with a card, right? And the British people are traders. They love to trade. They love to throw a bit of coin at each other.
Well, you see, going back to up north east, I mean, we like a bargain, don't we? Cash is king. They always used to say, cash is king. Now, on that note, we've been on probably for an hour. Yeah. So, Greg, would you like to come back next week and we'll do some more sessions and we'll expand on what we've covered this week?
Yeah. Let's do that. I'll yes.
Can we go over the people who are on the Privy Council perhaps next week? Because I think it would be good. I think it would be a useful point for people at home to understand that people in Parliament who say they want to dump the EU are actually lying, treacherous. I can't swear on my program. People, they are not telling the truth, and those people are often in the Privy Council, so they speak with forked tongue, and they do, don't they? I mean, that's the thing. We've got a think tank called Bright Blue Scotland. This is an Agenda 21 think tank. We've got 184 parliamentarians on there who are supporters. They range from people like Anna Soubry to Jacob Rees-Mogg to the two MPs who are in charge of Swindon, one who's Remain and one who wanted to leave. So it blurs. So what I'm trying to get people to think about is thinking outside the box, and for them to realise and wake up the fact that people who say they want to leave the EU actually in Parliament are actually supporters of the New World Order agenda.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of the Remainers are also compromised through the pedophilia. The world is run on shame, and most of the politicians are compromised through pedophilia or drug dealing or prostitution. And if you take Tony Blair, he was a homosexual who was caught in an act of sex with an underage male who was also a homosexual prostitute and a heterosexual prostitute, when Rupert Murdoch paid Tony Blair to have sex with Rupert Murdoch's wife so that Rupert Murdoch could have a cheaper divorce and marry Jerry Hall. Mick Jagger's ex. I mean,
yes, I've seen her at the bedroom window. I used to stay in a hotel next door to their house. Right. So, yeah, I've seen her actually in real life. I didn't realise that Murdoch actually paid Tony Blair to do that.
Yeah, Rupert Murdoch paid Tony Blair to have sex with Rupert Murdoch's wife just before their divorce. Yeah. So
he did initiate a divorce then.
Yeah. And he was one of the ones that got us into this mess. And also John Major is a grey man. He's an absolute out-and-out liar. And the reason Margaret Thatcher got kicked out of Parliament so quickly and with no thanks whatsoever, is that at the end, right at the end of doing a whole lot of really bad things, that she grew a conscience and they kicked her out and replaced with John Major, who then prorogued Parliament. So he shut down Parliament so that the Maastricht Treaty would go through, which the Queen loved because it was everything that she was taught of in her school. It went in her 10.5 hours education a week. So she signed the Maastricht Treaty and committed treason. And she's never been the Queen. And there's only 2 real kings in the United Kingdom every 2,000 years. And every other monarch in between is going, how shall I define my kingship? Right?
So who are the 2 real kings that you feel in the last
Well, you said that you believe that Jesus went to England, right?
Yeah.
And would that be before crucifixion year? Let's call it AD 33. Would that be before crucifixion year or after crucifixion year?
I guess it was before.
Well, so you're saying he died on the cross?
Well, they reckon he was married with children, don't they?
Yeah. Well, see, the way I've got it is the lineage, and he didn't actually carry the cross. Simon of Cyrene actually carried the cross, and the word cross wasn't used. It was gibbet, which means scaffold, right? And if you really read the Bible, there are actually no witnesses to the crucifixion. There's a couple of people, none of the apostles, and there's a couple of people about 100 meters away. So,
that's it.
Yeah, could they really see him? And then, there's documentary evidence of about 6 Jesuses post-crucifixion. And
Yes, I've heard that as well.
Yeah, and the ones that I've written up, I've wrote 2 volumes on it. One was that Jesus went to Regni, which was Kent. It used to be called Regni, Regni, and he was king of Regni, and then he walked 44 miles along Pilgrim's Way to Suffolk Cathedral, which is in London, and he took the ferry across to what's it called? The opposite the Courts of Justice, Temple Bar. Took the ferry across to Temple Bar, and he became the Mayor of London. And from the Mayor of London, he was an assize judge, and then he became the King of England, effectively, from being the Mayor of London. And the Mayor of London actually does all the job of the King of England.
Well, it was interesting. Well, it was interesting that I spoke to somebody that a certain event had happened at St. Michael's Mount. So they felt that Jesus had been quite affiliated with that particular area. Cornwall. Southern Cornwall.
I know quite well. And St. Michael's Mount.
Nice, it's really nice around there. And also, I was watching a video yesterday, and which somebody had sent me, that they'd done an analysis of the Turin Shroud.
Yeah.
And they had checked the blood of Jesus, and they found the X chromosome from Mary, but there was no Y chromosome, which indicate a virgin birth.
There's too many. Yeah, I just don't believe the sourcing on it. If you know what I mean. It's like I just don't believe the sourcing on it. So yes, I'm in 2 minds about the shroud. But other people have actually died and had a sheet over them and had their own images imprinted onto the cloth. That's actually happened. He looks like a absolute Templar dude, standing there with a sword, like this, with the sword going down the middle. So I can't comment, but...
Well, we went around. I mean, we might look a little bit old these days, but we went around in those days, weren't we?
There is a loop in it. There is a real loop in it, looping one thing to the other. So he's the so-called Shroud of Turin, and then there's the Turin lions in the Turin Zoo, and they are used as the models for the statues of the lions in Trafalgar Square, right? The 4 lions in Trafalgar Square. And those 4 lions are actually a model of the ancient map of London in, let's say, 1640, or 1560, I think it was the first map of London was drawn, which is in the shape of a lion without the head, suggesting that Jesus was Lord Mayor of London and he was the head of the lion. So if you look at the old city of London, it's in the shape of a lion. And the paw of the lion, like if a dog likes you, it'll put its paw over your foot. Yeah. So if a lion likes you, it'll put your paw over. So the paw of the lion on the map actually marks Jesus' grave. And then if you get all these old maps, often had flag and ribbon up the top, right? And if, in an oval shape with a couple of ribbon, flags on it, like blowing in the wind. So what I did is I got that image up top and I reversed it and then made it like 50% transparent and put it over the rooftops in the map. And where the ribbons matched with the rooftops actually marked Jesus' grave. So I marked Jesus' grave, and then I found that it was actually marked by a griffin. And the griffin dragon, with the wings out like that,
yeah,
is the mark of a silent emperor, like a very esteemed king. And that mark is the griffin dragon between Temple Bar and the Royal Courts of Justice, which is right outside the Templar Temple, the round temple, right? And that's where Jesus was buried, there, under that dragon. And they always put the most important graves in the maximum amount of traffic. And that's where Temple Bar Gate was, right? So he used to have a toll gate there. And then it used to be an archway. And then it got marked by the dragon. And the word, the letters under the dragon here, it's CG, which means Cumberland George or George Cumberland. And that was showing the lineage. And that was Prince Marcos Manuel's father, was Blind Prince George of Cumberland. And Prince Marcos Manuel held the title Christ. It's actually a title, right? And he held the title Christ above all Templar Grand Masters who had achieved Gnosis, and above all those in the Johannite tradition, which also used the title Christ. Right? So I'm one of the people with the title Christ, but I'm not in the Johannite tradition or the Templars. So that's kind of interesting. And the person who holds the title Christ, the highest level of the title Christ, is automatically the King of England, which is why my name is on the British coins and on the styles and titles.
The worry is that they're obviously, we just want to wrap up now, but
yeah.
As I see it, the New World Order and the royal family are not, they don't fit well together. I see that they want to collapse the royal family, rightly or wrongly. They want to collapse the royal family because you've got a lot of, you've got a lot of communism, sort of Marxism spreading now. Those people don't want a royal family, and that suits because the royal family don't want to be there anymore. They've taken their booty, and they've also got their own problems, like Prince Andrew with Epstein, etc., etc. And
Prince Charles with Jimmy Savile.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just disgusting.
Queen Elizabeth murdering her lesbian lover, Grace Kelly.
Sorry, what was that bit?
Queen Elizabeth murdering her lesbian lover, Grace Kelly.
Oh, so she's swung by both sides then?
Yeah, she's bisexual. Yeah.
Right, on that note, we're not going to get sued on this, are we? Right, so can I see you? Are you available next Tuesday? Could we make a date?
Okay, yep, what, 9 o'clock or?
Yeah, okay, yeah, so that we can go to a regular. I think most people have put their kids to sleep and all that. So
yeah, it's quite good. You have dinner,
Although I must admit I'm a morning person, but hey ho. 9 o'clock next Tuesday for part 5 of all the revelations, and let's just hope that we don't get taken off air before. Because as I was saying, I was allowed to share into groups today for the first time in a week. and 2 minutes later, shut down again, and I've just been banned for another week. So, I mean, the writing is on the wall, and that's biblical. And actually, you know, you were saying about the Bible, and it's quite a good, like a sat-nav, really, isn't it? Because, you know, some really cracking quotations in there. Because, and this is politics now, if the blind lead the blind, they all end up in a ditch. And that's exactly what is happening. Whether you know, anybody who's now going into a political party, support status, the blind are leading the blind, and we will all fall in a ditch because you'll never unite whilst you remain in your little rabbit warrens. So that is, it's so plain, isn't it? It's, you know, I was watching this QAnon film today, and it's all about divide and conquer. And people, wake up. It may or may not be Article 61. The jury's out on so many different groups, but we do need to start talking to each other. Greg, you're a star. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Have a brilliant weekend.
It is so disco calling me a star. You know, I just feel like I'm on rollerblades and in a gold suit.
Hey, I wouldn't have a show if I didn't have these guests. People say it's all about me. It's not about me at all. It's about my guests. And, you know, I let the guests speak most of the time.
See you on Tuesday.
Yeah, bless you. Have a good weekend. Tomorrow it's going to be the last cracking day, and then it's all downhill from then. So make the most of it tomorrow, everybody. And, see you next Tuesday.
Whoa!
9 o'clock on Tuesday. Bye, Greg.
Bye.
Do you own a gun? Did you know that your state's gun laws are constantly being changed and updated? Keep up to date with the USCCA's Concealed Carry and State Gun Law map by simply